for everyone joining. For those members of the public observing our sessions tonight, I am Stacy Rogers, and I'm honored to serve as Baltimore County's Administrative Officer and Chair of the Solid Waste Work Group. On behalf of County Executive John Olszewski, we extend greetings to our work group members and to all of those viewing our work group session this evening. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone of a few housekeeping items regarding our meeting. Number one, this work group session is being recorded. Also, members of the work group, you should have received all of your materials for this evening's meeting by email from Jennifer Porter, our GBB project manager. And we hope you have had the opportunity to review those documents. For our work group members, our WebEx chat function is available for your use during the meeting. Please feel free to comment through chat during the session if you would like to. Throughout the session, we will have designated periods for discussion and for questions. You may also present your questions and comments verbally if you would like. Please raise your hand and we will acknowledge you to give your comments or ask your questions. If you have questions or comments after the meeting, as has been our process, we ask you to email them to our county email box, the work group's email box. For members of the public observing our meeting tonight, this evening, we ask that if you have questions or comments, please send all questions and comments. Again, please send all questions and comments to the work group's email box at solidwasteworkgroup@baltimorecounty.md.gov. Again, let me repeat, for members of the public who are observing our meeting this evening, if you have questions or comments, we invite you to send your communications to the work group's email address at solidwasteworkgroup@baltimorecounty.md.gov. Colleagues, this evening we have a full agenda. We will receive preliminary feedback from our community survey that was conducted over the last several weeks. We're very pleased with the public's participation. We received over 6,700 responses. You will recall our initial target for the survey was 3,000 responses, which would have provided us with statistical significance. We want to thank the members of the public and those businesses who responded. Your feedback is so very important to our work and to this process. Tonight, we will hear feedback on what the public thinks regarding the questions that were asked. We will also hear from our sub-work group on residential collection, which included operational considerations for our hauler community. Again, I'd like to thank the members of our overall work group who participated in the sub-work group. Mr. Rob Singleton, Ms. Michelle Grace, Council Member Izzy Patoka, and Mr. Eric Addison. We also extend special thanks to two additional members of the hauler community who participated in the sub-work group, Mr. Jim Hayden and Tim Mearson. We want to welcome them to our meeting this evening. You will hear from members of the sub-work group a little later during the presentation. Last, we will review some of our emerging recommendation areas for discussion this evening. We have received quite a bit of information on a number of topics. And tonight we will see how these various topics and considerations are emerging, including those considerations, and feedback from the sub-hauler group. At the close of our meeting, I will have an additional update regarding our March 4th meeting, which will include a public comment section. We want to share this information on the registration process with the public, and this information will also, or is also, posted on our website. Ms. Peoples will give this information at the end of our session this evening. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Jennifer Porter, our GBB project manager, and we want to thank her for her continued exceptional service on this project, along with, excuse me, the other GBB colleagues and members of the authority. Jennifer, we can begin this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Appreciate it, and really appreciate the dedication of this entire team. Sumitra, can I share screen? There we go.
All right, go for it.
Thank you. Okay. So as Ms. Rogers noted, we had sent all materials last evening. I will note that there have been some updates to formatting. You'll see in some rounding of numbers in the survey section and some small edits. And I'll note one addition later as we move through, but mostly this is the same as what you had in advance. So I wanted to just note again, the full GBB team is, in addition to the county and the folks from the authority, we have a big team working on this, and just great appreciation to everybody from GBB and EA who's on this project. I wanted to say I'll be speaking tonight along with 3 GBB colleagues, and I wanted to just say in a brief, not that we don't already know each other, but I wanted to highlight I'm going to be speaking significantly to the zero waste practices and principles, and just as by way of bio, just noting my experience with the SWANA certification with the practitioner in zero waste practices and principles, and you can see some additional public sector experience I've had in addition to my work with GBB. Steve Simmons, GBB president, will be speaking on the strategies this evening. Steve's our officer in charge for our Kent County project in Michigan, which is a current procurement focusing on sustainable business park, and we're thrilled to have Steve's 35 years on the project. Harvey Gershman, who's a founder, owner, associate with GBB, more than 4 decades, and exceptional long-term experience in the region, including Baltimore County. And Sam Lybrand, more than 3 decades of experience in consulting and in the private sector, and has worked with Harvey significantly with the hauler subgroup work, which you're going to hear about tonight. So thanks to Sam for being on this evening as well. Our agenda, which you had also received as a separate file, is here. And as Ms. Rogers noted, we have a lot to cover. So we're going to keep moving ahead. We covered our opening remarks. I wanted to just reiterate this slide, which we shared in meeting 1 or meeting 2 of this process, just to say this is the input that we are having to inform decision making. The blue is the work group here, the presentations and discussions, the GBB team recommendations. That bottom circle we now have filled in some of the online digital survey and the public comment, which is forthcoming. At the top, the existing plans and policies in the county around solid waste management. So this is all funneling down into our tactical plan, and I'm very happy that the group is at this point where we are, as Ms. Rogers noted, bringing things together. We had issued a number of files. Both last week, there were some legislative updates, and then this week, all the materials for this file, this meeting, including the previous meeting notes. Are there any comments or updates on the files and issuance that was received? Not seeing anybody. Please also, if we do have the chat going. If anybody sees anyone, please let me know. I can't see everybody all at once. Okay. So with that, then we are going to move right into our online digital survey report. I would note I sent you a full slideshow, which is a draft of the full presentation on the survey. We're not going to have time to go through all that, so we have a selection of slides that are pulled out here to cover the survey. As Stacy noted, we are really pleased with this effort. It was open from January 5th through February 7th. The links were here from the solid waste page, and we had this available in 4 languages. And I would say the requirements here were that you had to be over 18 and a resident of Baltimore County, or have a business in Baltimore County. We did have, despite the COVID, restrictions, we did have some really nice signage that the county team put together for display at the resident drop-off centers. And you can see pictured here one of the really nice visible posters. And I think this was part of the success along with the rest of the advertising. Some of which was web-based, again, on the county's website and the relevant solid waste pages. It was really nicely linked. And it was also extremely well done on the social media side. You can see on the left side of the screen all of the postings that came out from the Baltimore County government page. And then on the right side, some of the groups that were resharing this. So this was, in addition to this work group, we know that you promoted to your networks and emails, and also a lot of community groups also reshared the post, which was really nice. So in terms of what came back, we had a very high completion rate. As you can see over here, 85% of the people that started completed it, very high. 66.68 was the resident survey, and on the business side, we had 109 separate business responses. So that gets our total just over 6,700. In terms of who responded, if you look on the left side, you can see this is what came back in our survey, which really, when you look at the right side of comparison of the distribution of ages in the county, you can see we have very similar response in terms of who, by age, who responded. So in terms of representation of the survey, we think it really did hit the age stratification, as you can see here. Basically, everybody was in Baltimore County. In terms of zip code, we have a few presentation slides on the zip codes. So we have, this is what's called a tree map of both the zip codes and the jurisdictions that responded by zip code. So you can see which ones by the shape of the block had the highest responses. And I think this is also a way to look at it by the highest count of zip codes and percent. So this double chart kind of gives you an indication of where the responses came from in the highest concentration. I think that the easiest way, though, to see, or the graphical way to see this resident zip code response is the what we call the heat map. So you can see the view of the county by zip code and the number of respondents by zip code. So the darker color being the more respondents to the survey. And the little green line, which you can kind of see going here, this is the URDL, the urban, the demarcation line that is relevant to the solid waste in terms of yard materials collection. So we have that overlaid. And we think if you look at the next slide, and I'll flip back to this one, but this is the population density map of the county. And you can see, we think that the sort of darker color is again representing what we think is similar to the distribution of the population. So bottom line is really nice representation and by zip code and by age. In terms of household size, we also feel like we got the right mix. We had the highest respondents being 2 to 3 members of the household, which matches also the statistical data for the county. We had an overwhelming majority of the residents who took the survey live in a single family home, 95%. Now, if you take this slide and the next one, saying, do you own or rent? We also had 94% saying that they own their home. So on this statistic, we have an oversampling, meaning that based on the data, there are, for Baltimore County, per the American Community Survey, 66% of people are homeowners. So we're overrepresented in the survey, which is not surprising given that people in multi-dwellings may not have direct control and may not be as likely to take the survey. In summary, on the takeaways, there's a lot of text here. I'm not going to read all of this, but we presented it for summary information of those previous slides. I wanted to note the little asterisks at the bottom, which basically says, we are aware as we undertook the survey that we have what's called self-selection bias, or meaning that it's not a randomized survey as you would have with telephone survey and other methods. So we are definitely getting people that wanted to take the survey, and we have to factor that into our analysis. But we think that the large number of responses does help assuage this response bias. This second part of the key takeaways is what I had covered in terms of the 96% saying that they use curbside collection for trash and recycling. That aligns with the home ownership question and also the single family question that we noted. But again, noting here, we're over in the middle bullet where it's the 66% of Baltimore County residents. That's the statistics from the American Census. So again, we're overrepresented on the homeowners. And again, we think if you look on this, I'm not going to cover every item on here. We hit on a lot of the points, but I would just say in terms of zip codes represented, we have a vast majority of the zip codes, 49 zip codes represented, and some of the ones that were very small. So really good coverage. In the business responses, we don't have corollary slides on every one, but this one I wanted to share. Of the businesses that did respond, we had really nice representation across different sectors. Each one of the bars is different sectors. So we had accommodation, hospitality, construction, healthcare, professional services. Those were some of the highlights on the business side. So on some of the key takeaways, and again, on the big PowerPoint that I sent in PowerPoint format, there's a lot more pie charts and things that we're going to have time to go through. But I did want to highlight a few specific key points. The third point here being that people generally felt like they had enough information, and the vast majority, more than 90%, 91% said they regularly recycled where they lived. So of the 9% who did not, the reasons that they indicated are on the bottom here, that they were either unsure or recycling was not available. So again, that's only of the 9% that said they did not regularly recycle. So we have a high, again, back to the response bias of the group that took it, we have a high representation of people that are regularly engaging in recycling. This takeaway in terms of the residential survey is interesting. The bottom line here is that there is more diversity in terms of how people manage yard materials than how they responded that they managed trash and recycling. So for both trash and recycling, 95+% said they did it curbside, whereas yard materials, you can see more diverse mix of how people manage that. And I think I wanted to highlight the backyard compost column. So for yard materials, 22% of the people that they managed yard materials did so with backyard composting. Now this relates into later, we're going to hit on some a strategy, and we already have discussed this in the work group, the county's interest in the expansion of the backyard composting program. So I think this is very supportive of that strategy. In terms of the roll cart question, there we had a number of questions related to roll carts. So there is a strong preference for roll carts for trash and recycling, and what we call a slight preference in terms of yard materials. You can see the numbers split here. Actually, for yard materials, it's almost exactly a three-way split between preferring a roll cart, keeping the container as it is, and no preference. But as this does play directly into one of the a big discussion item during the hauler subgroup, and one of the strategies that we're putting forth tonight. So I think this is an interesting finding, and what we're going to be doing is taking the relevant survey findings and putting them into support of the tactical plan as we get the work group's feedback on the strategies. This sixth item is an interesting look at satisfaction. So the vast majority of respondents are satisfied with their curbside collection as it is, but this is an important however point. There's also a majority, if you look on the blue all the way to the left, 58% said that they would be supportive of a consolidated collection schedule for multiple waste streams. And if you add that 16% that they may be supportive of that consolidated collection schedule, this is also one of the key points we talked about at length in the hauler subgroup, and have a recommendation regarding some pilot work in this area of same-day collection. But I think that this is it's indicative of the fact that people are generally satisfied, but are also interested in what could possibly be changed. Okay, and then a little further on the what residents are currently doing. This is really reflective of what they currently have in terms of frequency. But if you think about this in relation to the previous slide, there's also some interest in consolidation. So the preference here was for weekly trash and recycling, which is the current for most places in the county. But for yard materials, it's split almost evenly between preferred being every other week or preferred being weekly for yard materials, which this is also been a topic of conversation, which we will discuss more shortly. In terms of general satisfaction, this slide actually is slightly updated from the one that I sent, because it has another, from the version you had last night of this PowerPoint, we added both the curbside numbers and the drop-off center numbers, which are very similar. This is, again, general satisfaction, somewhat to very satisfied with curbside and drop-off. So the highest satisfaction for both curbside and drop-off was with recycling and trash, then recycling, and then yard materials for both. So you can see how people are feeling, which is generally positive. And also to note that if you think back to how people are managing their materials, most majority said curbside for both trash and recycling. Okay, we asked a number of questions about additional materials that people would be interested in looking at, and we asked preference questions about the material, and then also willingness to pay for the service. So on the left here, we have the material type, and this is sorted by the highest percentage of people saying that they were interested in adding this. So bulk items is number one, plastic bags and film, flexible plastic is number two, takeout containers, textiles, food scraps, and then a custom category. And the words at the bottom on this slide are what people wrote in most commonly related to the custom materials. And we just note that sometimes people wrote in custom items that were already some of the material categories they could have chosen. So there is, there is some overlap here because some people wrote custom items that were actually already a category. But in any case, what you can tell from this is that there's interest. The top two items are bulk and flexible plastic. And then on the right, showing the willingness to pay. So between yeses and maybes, the highest willingness to pay ratio you can see on the right is for bulk items at 1.7 to 1, meaning 1.7 people said they would or maybe would pay for that service versus not. Highest then is for bulk and food scraps and custom items. So from this, we took away that for the people that put a custom item, which was not everybody, but they had a higher propensity to say they'd be willing to pay for it if they wrote it, even if it was something that was previously in a category. So there's a lot I know we're moving quickly and there's a lot to digest. It won't be the last time we look at this, but I'm going to keep going for the interest of time, and then we'll have a pause here at the end in a few slides to take comments. In terms of the ways that people wanted to receive material, the website was most highest ranked throughout. 25% of the people said that, which also aligns with how people currently access waste management info in the county. Other than the website, they reported rarely using the other types that were offered. And if you want to look at in the big PowerPoint, and again, I'm not going to detail it, but if you look at slide 70 to 79, it shows the residents' responses to the different types of, you know, would you call your hauler? Would you dial 311? People reported rarely utilizing those options for getting information. So we really, as we are thinking about the strategies that are coming forth as proposed for the tactical plan, this is definitely one we're focusing on regarding education outreach and the methods that would be most advantageous for the county. Related to that, well, actually, this one is on special assistance. 96% of respondents said they do not need special assistance with taking out their solid waste. However, 2% said they did, and we got write-in answers for a number of these. So either that they needed assistance or knew someone that did. So just looking at the 96% that said they don't, thinking about 4% then that would or know someone that would, that would equate to about 34,000 residents in the county, that 4%. So just to give us a sense of scale. And again, we know we have a self-selection bias on this, so we can't make those leaps, but just to give a sense of scale. And this one feeds into the also how do people get information. We had a question on how did they actually take this survey itself. 63% said on a mobile or smartphone. So this plays into the concepts around advanced apps for education and also using text, as people, not surprisingly, are more on their phones. Okay, so with that, I know I went very quickly. but I'm going to take a pause point here for comments and questions, and just look forward to hearing any initial feedback from the group.
Jennifer, I know in the larger presentation, I know we may have touched upon it, but it kind of ties to some of the discussions from the subgroup that we'll talk about the carts. Can we just go back and touch a little bit further on the interest in moving to carts?
Yeah. Let me go back here. Yeah.
Right. So we just want to see that there is a significant number in terms of this population who responded.
Right, who either said they would prefer it, or there's an interesting group that had no preference there too, almost equal.
Right. So I just want to, make sure that in our later discussions, when we start talking about the emerging themes and the emerging options that may make up our recommendations to factor in, I think we need to go back to certain pieces that were reflected in the survey as we look at what did citizens think about it, what did residents, is a better word, what did residents think about certain topics? Because I was taken by this particular data set. That's all I wanted to note.
Okay. Yep.
Jennifer, this is Steve. Wave my hand, I guess, rather than in the chat. First of all, thank you for the summary. It's great to see this, and of course, with the getting over twice as many respondents as we had hoped for, makes it even more accurate statistically.
Yeah.
So a couple of comments, and I guess part of it ties into strategies too, but if food scraps are so low in interest, only 9% as opposed to bulk items and plastics, for instance, does it warrant us taking on the issue of food scrap collection? Or do you think in part it's education or information about what this means? Because if people aren't used to composting or gathering food scraps, it may be that it just seems very unusual or dirty or not sanitary or something. Do you have any sense of that? Because you may have seen similar surveys in other places.
Yeah, it's possible that asked differently or provided with more information about the topic, as you said, Steve, we would have gotten to a different result as opposed to just sort of ranking interest items. If it was phrased differently, we could always potentially get a different take. But one of the things I think is really interesting is the backyard composting stat, and that to me, taken with the idea that the county's already wanting to expand that piece, I think has to be factored in, because that is a very high self-reporting number. Again, now we know we have a group that is not reflective of the whole with that part, but I do think that the backyard strategy may be very more economical in this case. I think what we're proposing, and again, these things were kind of all happening at the same time. So the hauler subgroup was going on without the survey results being done, and we didn't have the benefit of knowing what the survey said. So what came forth from the hauler subgroup concepts were around piloting some ideas, sort of testing some ideas, as opposed to, as you would not want to roll something out to the entire county without testing it related to food and the other topics around carts. So that's how it's currently framing up. But I do think it's part of the planning around what could be piloted or tested in any of these potential add-ons could be more focused discussion with residents to make sure you'd want to go ahead.
And I think your point's well taken that as Public Works and Solid Waste is going to roll out the urging people to buy a backyard composting equipment, that may encourage more people to do food scrap recovery and composting, because right now the survey only dealt really with yard waste or yard materials as part of the backyard composting.
Right.
A second question is, I was surprised at the high percentage of people who felt that they knew exactly what to recycle, considering what we continually hear is that so many recycled materials are either inappropriate or not, they're dirty, can't be reused. I mean, we're, you know, if I remember Mike correctly, we really only take, you know, number 1 and number 2 as far as the recycling plastics that we can use, but I know that's a small portion of all the plastics that a household may see. So I was surprised that everybody feels confident that they know what they're doing. Like my favorite example is always pizza boxes that are contaminated. You know, it's like people, oh, I can recycle it, it's cardboard, but if it has grease on it, it can't be. So
Right.
I wonder about people's level of education, frankly.
Mr. Lafferty, it's interesting that you would say that, because my husband and I have had that same conversation as I've immersed myself in this area, and I do believe that people think they know. So a response may be they think they know, but I think from the information we heard from our colleagues in North Carolina, that robust education strategy around recycling and what's there proved to be very instrumental in their efforts, because I do believe that people assume something could be recyclable, but it's not.
Right. Well, but this would suggest that you don't need a robust education program because people already know what to do.
Right, but what I'm saying, like my husband thinks,
Yeah.
he thinks something is something that needs to be recycled, and then I would say, well, no, that is not something we would recycle for the same things you were talking about. But he was like, oh, I thought I knew. But what he said was, oh, I didn't know that.
No, I understand. I don't disagree. I just find this statistic interesting. So thank you, Jennifer. Good work.
I think he would have marked, I know. I'm just going to say that I know, when in actuality, certain nuances to it, he didn't. We've had a lot of talk about what we put in our trash can. And I see that Sarah agrees. Yeah, what I know and what I think are often very different. Exactly. That's what we are finding in our household. I said, so what I told her was, let me check on that. And it's been a great conversation in our household about trash. So are there other questions? I know we're going to use this data, particularly as we get into next session, when we're going to prioritize and we're going to actually, vote, if you will, in terms of certain pieces, or at least be able to, I don't want to call it voting, but be able to articulate as each work group member our position on certain things. So we'll go back and we'll reference certain parts of the data to see what the public thought about something as we think about it, as what's in the plan. Going back to the funnel, using all of the balls that are in the funnel that Jennifer continues to show us to help inform our decision. That's how we want to use this information. But I thought it was very, very insightful in certain areas, but we do have to, as Sarah indicated, think about certain things based on what people know and what people think.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Mearson said as a hauler, he can tell you that people don't know, that they really don't know. And so the hauler colleagues will be experts on what people put in recycling bins versus like putting stuff in the bag. Like I told my husband, he would put recycling in a plastic bag and then I go behind him and I take it out.
Mhm.
So one day I just told him, I said, don't put it in a bag. It should be loose.
Stacy, I can concur. I spent time actually up at the MRF picking through with the inmates and temp workers to see what it was like from their perspective. I can tell you, there's a lot of people who have no idea what's recyclable and what's not recyclable.
Okay. If there are no further immediate conversations here, Jennifer, I think, did DeAndrea join us yet?
Not yet. She's going to be after the food section. We're gonna go through the strategies and then come back to the hauler after. So I think we can go ahead.
Okay. Well, then we're going to have to switch the agenda item.
I did switch it for her. I put the hauler subgroup reports next. I mean, it's after. We're gonna do the proposed strategies, some of which is reflected from the hauler subgroup work, but we're gonna
Yeah, that's the challenge with going to those before we have the presentation.
Yeah, I know, which we want. Obviously, we were gonna do that first, but then I think
Let me check and see how far she is in her meeting.
Okay, let's check. Because we can move ahead.
And again, I will remind individuals who are observing, members of the community who are observing our session tonight, please send us any comments and email. We are unable to take questions from the community. Next month, we have a full open period for comments and we will discuss sign up for that, but we're unable to take questions and comments during the work group meeting from members of the public. I see, hands raised question. We're unable to do that. I just want to manage expectations that it's the observation process only. So we're checking with DeAndrea, but do you want to take a few minutes and Savitra could talk about that while we're waiting for DeAndrea?
Sure, yeah, we can go ahead. Sure.
Okay, Savitra, do you want to pull up?
Let me stop.
Jennifer, can you
let me stop.
Bruce, and then she can pull up, because we want everyone to participate in those who want to participate. We have been tracking, on average, we have about 14 individuals, and some are regulars. Each meeting I do write down who observes our meeting, and we do encourage those who observe our meeting to participate in terms of signing up. So Savitra is going to talk to us about that, and that'll buy us a little bit more time for DeAndrea to join us.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So good evening, everyone. So you see on your screen, just to walk everyone through, this is the Solid Waste Work Group webpage that's on the county website. There is a link that has now been added to the Thursday, March 4th Solid Waste Work Group meeting calendar invite, so individuals can join, and there's also a link to actually register online. So those who are attending this meeting, and for our work group members, you can direct individuals and just encourage them to register online by selecting this link. It will take them to a registration page. that provides them an overview of the public comment registration form. As mentioned, this is for the March 4th meeting. This is necessary in order to make public comments for that specific meeting. Individuals who wish to make public comments will need to participate via the WebEx virtually, utilizing their smartphone, tablet, laptop, or desktop computer. There's just another note is that individuals who sign up will receive a notification from the Solid Waste Work Group email account shortly after. So if there are any issues, technological issues or questions that they may have, they will have access for someone to be able to help address. The form is very straightforward. It collects their name, email address, the best contact number for them, and their address. And then they'll just submit the form. And as mentioned, we'll get a notification and we'll follow up with them thereafter to confirm their meeting time. Just to provide a general walkthrough of what will occur on March 4th. We will have a list of all who have pre-registered, and throughout the meeting, once we conclude the work group discussion, we'll segue into the public comment period, in which I will work directly with each registrant to provide them the opportunity to provide comment. Each individual will have 2 minutes, which will be timed. And we will just let them know that, if they have additional comments, that they can, of course, direct them to the Solid Waste Work Group email account. Any questions?
So as we asked with the survey, if you would like to share this with your particular constituencies, and Councilmember Patoka, being a resident in your district, I know I receive the notices on things, so we would ask that everyone do the same if you will communicate, so we do have a good representative sample of individuals who would like to present comment.
Certainly.
And with that, Stacy, do we just send them to the website?
Yes. Yes, they have to. Savitra, can you go back to the webpage?
Yeah, was there?
We'll send them to direct them to the Solid Waste Work Group webpage, and they go to the Thursday, March 4th meeting, and then they can register, just click register online, and then the other registration will come up.
Savitra, could you send us a link to this so we could just send a link out rather than direct people to the webpage?
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you. That might be easier to get it out to more people more quickly.
Okay, Savitra, thank you. If there are no other questions,
one thing we could do is come back to the collection related recommend strategies. We could start if DeAndrea she's still tied up.
yeah, she said 6 o'clock because she's presenting on this other event. But let me ask one question related to the public comment. There's a question, would county take comments from non-Baltimore County residents? What has been your past experience? Any of the colleagues in your other efforts?
If someone has expertise, they might add value by just adding a comment. I mean, I don't know who is asking that question, but It could be someone who's experienced similar challenges in another jurisdiction that they want to just offer opinion. I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm fine if others are fine. We did not set that as a criteria, that you had to be a Baltimore County resident to speak. Wouldn't, I would think that people speak on top.
Mhm.
So I would say, I would venture to say yes.
And Madam Chair, I just also want to add that we are requesting residents or interested individuals who want to provide public comment to please register the day before, so by March 4th, so that they will have an adequate period of receiving that confirmation and any other instructions, as it would be difficult to do so on the day of and most certainly during the meeting.
And it'll be,
March 4th.
no, we will not be able to take registrants during the meeting. I mean, that's the same as in our council proceedings, because you do have to get them, especially in this environment, we can't do it that way, because you have to give them the link. But what I would say is, Savitra, did you share that your it's live? It's already live?
Yes, it's currently on the webpage. It's live.
I see a comment in terms of preference. Well, Savitra will be managing the number of registrants, and that's why we want to be able to do as many, to get all of our initial work done, so we have a good amount of time for people to register. But we'll begin to know, because the link is live now, right, Savitra?
That's correct.
The link is live now, so we can just update through email on the comment, the numbers that we have. So I have 5:55. We have about 5 more minutes before the end. Are there any other housekeeping things that we can get out of the way, or what that you wanted to talk about, Jennifer, for the prioritization?
I can talk about that. Yeah. So the
We have
prioritization.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. What we're going to go through, DeAndrea will lead us through the hauler subgroup report, and other members will speak from the hauler subgroup, and then we are going to go through the strategies that have been distilled down from, right now there are 18, so we're going to spend the time going through those. That's coming forth from the briefing memo feedback that we've gotten from the work group as we've moved through the topics. Also the discussion during the meetings and our presentations during the meetings, which aligned with the briefing memos, as well as the initial GBB teamwork that formed the background memo, and then the concurrent input from the online digital survey, and what we are anticipating will be the public comment at the next meeting. So all this to say, if you think back to the funnel, and we're distilling down to what we're going to present tonight as the 18 strategies, we're covering 4 areas. We have them organized as collection, infrastructure and disposal, collection, new programs and services, then infrastructure, disposal, and funding and contracts. And then we have another consideration category too, other. But the note that I want to make is, when you see these strategies tonight, the thing that I've added is the demarcation of the strategies that are related to zero waste, as this group has defined it. Now I'll review those slides again. But what's going to happen after this meeting is the next meeting, which will be meeting number 8. The first part of the meeting will be the draft of the tactical plan, and prior to that meeting, this group will receive the full, more complete strategy summaries. Essentially, we are bringing each of these strategies as they may be shaped still from this group, but each of the strategies forward in a 2-page format along with a summary table. So you're going to be able to see not just the description of the strategy, which is what we're going to cover tonight, but also estimated costs, schedule, and greenhouse gas impacts. So that is what we have endeavored to do with this group is bring you everything possible. If you fast forward to meeting number 8, you'll have at that point seen the presentation with the full description of the strategies, including cost and schedule and impact. You will then have heard public comment at the second half of the meeting. What we're going to do is we are estimating the first hour to be the presentation, second hour to be public comment, or as long as it needs to go for the public comment. And following that meeting, we will be issuing the work group what we could call either an opinion poll or a prioritization poll, which, to Stacy's point of saying whether or not you want a strategy in or out and your view of its priority, as well as open comments, that will be coming out after the meeting on the 4th. So we're going to request that poll back from this group, and it's going to be using Question Pro, which is the same tool we use for the online digital survey. We will request that back from you by the Monday following our March 4th meeting, which will be end of the day, March 8th. So that is the plan, similar to what we've done with the briefing memos, where we asked for feedback the following Monday. We're going to do that with the poll for this group, and we think will be a very comprehensive chance for you to weigh in on what you'll have heard some of tonight, the rest of at the next meeting, in addition to the public comment, and can really weigh in at that point as we endeavor to bring draft interim recommendations in mid-March related to fiscal year 22 specifically, and then the full tactical plan mid-April. So
I want to reiterate. Okay, and I wanted to reiterate 2 pieces that Jennifer indicated. We're trying to bring all of the information that we've experienced, and we've learned a lot. I don't know about each of you, but I know I've learned a lot about this industry in general, from the beginning of collection through diversion, through strategies to enhance our capacity to divert trash or things out of what would be disposed of, reducing what we're disposing of, and then options for disposal. So we have to go across the continuum. We have to look across the continuum, each of us, and the team has tried to organize things in that manner. Each of these 18 areas has its own briefing memo, if you will, because the team began to give the briefing memos to us to review in terms of guiding the discussion. In that briefing memo, and we've gone over this a couple of times in the planning session, you will have cost information. You will have projected timelines. And then upon reviewing all of those, you will have from Thursday after the meeting through close of business that following Monday. So that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. 4 days to look at the briefing memos and then do your survey response. Because we're trying to gather everyone's position, and there's an open space in there there's space for narrative in each of the areas on the survey. The survey literally corresponds to the briefing memos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to just share also while I'm moving in here. Yeah.
So stuff,
he
he should be with us now.
current slide. Yeah, this is just the strategies are what we're going to go through after the Holler subgroup report are broken out into these areas. We do have another category also, just to remind us of our framework, which we are building all the strategies into, with the center point being less waste, more inclusive and livable, vibrant Baltimore County. And then our 3 rings in the Venn diagram that we're building the strategies to meet. Our key items, again, for consideration, key elements, and the sustainable materials management hierarchy that's helping to guide the thinking on the strategies from our team and the work group. And just a note here, this one I did want to say, so zero waste for Baltimore County, this has been an evolving definition, as we had a discussion a few weeks back about what is zero waste for Baltimore County. These items of reduce, reuse materials, increase recycling, and sustainability lens for what's left is the working definition that we've had. And we've taken comments from the group about our strategies and what is zero waste. So this little notation, which we're using up here on the left, you can see the zero waste green with the chasing arrows, the can in the middle. That is the demarcation that we're adding to the strategies that are zero waste related as we go through today. So that's what was not on your version of the slideshow from yesterday. So I just wanted to highlight that. And that is what you'll see. And, you know, again, we updated your comment, Sarah, from last time about the MRF related upgrades being zero waste strategy because it would increase recycling. So we've added that. But you'll see this as we go through. And is DeAndrea on now? Let's see. Oh, I don't hear you, Stacy.
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
there you go. That's okay.
I just text her, so I'm waiting for a response. But there is one question. I don't think we can answer the whole thing now, but this is about our things that we recycle here in Baltimore County. I'll ask Mr. Beechler. Mr. Beechler, can you, while we're giving DeAndrea another minute or two, can you just verbally talk about what we recycle? I know we just reinstituted our glass recycling. We were collecting glass, but we weren't really recycling it, if you will, but we are now recycling in that, and that's one of the things we're proud that we reinstituted. But Mr. Beechler, can you share quickly what we do recycle currently, and then I know we want to consider what else we will recycle. I think you're muted, Mr. Beechler, if you're talking.
You're unmuted, Mike. Oh.
Mr. Beechler, are you having difficulty?
You're unmuted, Mike. I think he's having technical difficulty.
Okay, well, we'll respond to that particular question. But I do believe we have a list of items, but in my experience here in the county, I don't recall like comparing what I've seen or focused in on, because I haven't focused in, I just have recycled and followed my little schedule that comes in the mail every year. But I personally believe, and I think others on the group believe, that we do need to look at more robust strategies in communicating what we recycle now, and as we look at other ways to recycle. I was very, very impressed with the communication campaign from the presenter from North Carolina.
And I wanted to say on that also that we are incorporating continued communication with a number of the work group presenters as we prepare the strategies, including Miss Mel Gills from North Carolina State on the framework around education outreach. So I think that's exciting.
All right, I think we need to move on because we need ample amount of time for this section. I know that there were other
We have
speakers
other. Mhm.
from the work group. If we want to start with opening remarks from participants who are designated, and then DeAndrea will just have to catch up with us.
Okay.
I am here.
Oh, wonderful. That look, I would never want to be the starting act for anybody and have to keep stalling. But anyway,
I'm
we
so
had a
sorry.
No,
conversation.
we didn't go through. Yeah, we
have not.
We didn't go through anything on any strategies yet because we wanted to have the holler conversation first. So this is bumped up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
apologize. You want me to start, Madam AO?
Yes, how you
Okay.
all were going to present your speakers and however you were presenting to the larger group.
Well, thank you all for allowing the sub-hauler work group to present our feedback to you all tonight. Sorry that I'm just joining, but a couple of our sub-hauler work group members would like to bring you all a few greetings to tell you all about exactly kind of what we went through in terms of our feedback. Councilman Patoka, are you on?
Yes, he's here.
I am. So thank you, Ms. Walker. And I just want to share with everyone on this on the work group this evening something I shared with the council members at our legislative meeting on Tuesday night. And I just wanted to commend everyone that is participating in this, because we're looking at every component of how we dispose of trash from, and it's such a comprehensive view of what we're doing, from what we put into what can, into what cart, how it's being picked up, what fuel is being used, and how we dispose of it, how we transport it, how it's treated in a landfill, how we recycle. And I've learned, as Ms. Rogers has stated, we've all learned so much from this. And it's sometimes very difficult to think long term and how we'll get to into something that is good for the haulers that I've come to know and love, and everyone else that's participating. It's really hard to think long term, and how we treat our planet and this place we call Baltimore County. There is no planet B, so this is it for us. And so I just want to thank everyone for digging in and thinking long term. You know, I work from home now during COVID, and had CNN on the background, and 2020 was a pretty crappy year, and moving into 2021, we had some really good news today. The Mars rover landed today on Mars, and there was 7 minutes of what they called terror. The rover was moving at 12,000 miles per hour, and there were scientists, mathematicians, and astrophysicists all in a room, just like we are, and they were thinking many years ago, how do we do this and how do we get there? And it all came down to what happened today. And after 7 minutes of trying to slow this rover down from 12,000 miles per hour to a safe landing speed on a planet millions of miles away, they all got up and they applauded their work. And so, in the same vein, while we aren't mathematicians, astrophysicists, and scientists trying to figure this out, we are people that care about Baltimore County, that we're trying to figure out something that's going to help us in the long term. And sometimes it's really hard to think of where we're going to be down the road. And I have learned that we have severely underpaid for many years the people that do this nuts and bolts of government, of how we pick up, disposing of our trash, and we need to correct that in some way. And so count me all in on correcting this. Also, I'm counting everyone all in on working this together so we can slow this thing moving down that's been moving at 12,000 miles per hour and come to a safe landing where we're doing the right thing for all of the stakeholders that are participating in this work group and have been committed to the work group, and also I want to include the community reps as well, because they're key stakeholders as well as everyone participating in this meeting. So just to everyone that's hung in there, we're going to get some short-term deliverables, and then we also are looking in the long term so that Baltimore County is a place that's well managed, that operates well, and that is a place that is it's a clean place, and it's a environmentally safe place. So thank you all so much, and thanks for giving me a chance to speak. I hope, Ms. Walker, I didn't talk too long.
That's great.
No, not at all. We thought that it was important while we're talking to the work group as a whole, that we as the subgroup come to you as a group and indicate to you our the work that we did together, bringing this information to you. And with that, I think it's only fair. I need to also ask Mr. Singleton if he would also give some remarks, being on the work group and the subgroup as well. I'm sorry, Madam AO, you on mute.
Before you do that, I just want to say, Councilmember Patoka, I just appreciate the time that you have spent with us at the full work group level and then the sub work group. I know how much time that was, but to have you involved actively at the table, rolling up your sleeves and helping us to think through these things that, quite frankly, as I've shared before, it's my understanding that the county has never endeavored to have this kind of dialogue or this kind of conversation about solid waste, and to engage the hauler community and the broader community. So I really appreciate having your partnership and just knowing you, as we've talked about before, for a long time. I know you're willing to roll up your sleeves and advocate for the things that we need to do to move Baltimore County forward with respect to whatever it is we decide to recommend to move things forward and identify down the road the funding that we need to do this, because we know that all of these new things and what we need to do will need resources, and to advocate for that is important.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm glad to be part of this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ms. Walker, I turn it back to you in the sub work group.
So I will turn it over to Mr. Singleton, who also would like to bring a few remarks.
Yeah, I would just like to comment that the hauler community is very dedicated to the work that we do. A lot of us are families that have been doing this many, many years. We embrace the county's inclusion of us in feedback and getting our thoughts on it. And funding is very important to us. It's been something that I've been involved in the past 10 years. And it, quite frankly, has been pretty frustrating. I do sense that we are moving in the right direction, and the whole concept of a 5-year service agreement is one that we embrace at this point. Some of us would like to see it longer, but we're accepting of a 5-year agreement, I think, at this point. But it is predicated. I don't think the haulers will agree to this if it isn't funded to a pretty significant level. That's really what the message that I would like to leave with at this point.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Singleton, I will say that's one thing we're trying to drill down. What is that cost? We need to understand what is the cost to do this business? What does it cost? Because that drives the how much. And clearly, we're keenly focused in on what you need to do, each of you, to do your share of the business, and then considering some of the best practices that we talked about, what that cost would be. That's really where what we're trying to drill down, particularly for the pieces that impact you all, because we do know that we have to look at the full continuum, but we want to really understand that cost. So going forward, those are the things we're committed as county to working with you all. This is about the partnership that you've had with the county for many, many years. And now it's time for us to all really understand what it costs to do this business, and then how might we be able to implement some enhancements and efficiencies that will help you all and help deliver the quality services that you all have been delivering. You have that commitment, as I said to the on the work the full hauler briefing. I'm a woman of my word.
No, I definitely sense that, and I'm not bringing up I am not bringing it up now because I'm questioning that. I'm only stating kind of where I think the haulers are coming from.
Absolutely.
We definitely support the notion of annual cost of living type adjustments, however they are calculated and based. I think that's one of the areas that we've been particularly lacking in the past, as has been well documented.
Absolutely. I'm affirming what you're saying, and we are there with you. And I think Councilmember Patoka in our sub conversations, we both recognize that in other industries, that's a natural part of contracts. So that's that we need to do the same. We need to have that same kind of approach with this.
Thank you, Madam AO and Mr. Singleton. In addition, one of the benefits that we also had, because we felt that it was very important to get a good selection of hauler representation, we also had Tim Mercer and Jim Hayden as a part of our subgroup. And as an additional hauler representative, Mr. Mercer would also like to provide a comment.
Hello, everybody. I would just like to kind of add on to Rob Singleton's comments there. He had seemed to pretty much hit all the concerns of the haulers. Things that I would like to just state to make note of is the fact that the loyalty that the haulers have given without any kind of contract, without any kind of, problems. Anytime something's gone wrong in the county, we've always stepped up. Most of the families that run these businesses, pretty much this is the only thing that they do and know. So, we just want to put out the loyalty that the haulers have given the county, even through the hard times that haven't been reciprocated with the funding back to us. We've all seemed to stand in and given our best to do the best service. The biggest thing there again, as Rob said, was the funding needs to definitely come up. And I guess with the 5-year contract and then moving on past the 5-year contract, as to either franchising from that point on to the haulers or, figuring out a longer term. Some of us, morally, we want to do a good job for the 5 years because this is going to be a whole new pilot projects and things that are going to be done by the haulers. But we don't want to, I don't want to feel that for 5 years, I take all the complaints from the residents and all the problems and changing routes and conforming everything. And then after the 5 years, the county basically says, thank you for putting up with everything. Have a nice day. We're going to put this out on bid and replace you, and we no longer need you. if we even get a thank you out of it. So I just want to make note that the haulers have been loyal and would like to continue to be loyal as long as possible. And we're just looking for something to, tell us that the county is behind us and that this is not just a short term until they find something better. But with that, that's all I'd like to say. And thank you for everybody listening and, being an open government to work with us and try to move this forward.
Pearson, thank you. And from the point that I met you all now a little over, well, it was a year in October 31st. Our agenda is about continued partnership. And as I said during the hauler call, this is not at the end of the 5 years. This is not a situation where we're saying thank you. We no longer need your services. As we said, we're looking at how we could structure a process after that. Looking at set asides, because this whole notion of a big company coming in, taking over, that's not what we're doing. We the county have the ability to frame it and to work in conjunction with the existing hauler group. So I'll just reiterate that again. I shared that with the larger hauler group, and I'm sharing it again tonight, that is not our intent, but we need to just continue to take one step forward. And I think and I want to clarify one thing you said, this is not a contract. The 5-year period, it's not a contract. It's a service agreement, gives protection to you all. And that's where we want to put in there the CPI, like we have in other arrangements with people who deliver services for the county. We want to talk about the other pieces that we need, just the reciprocal relationship that would be incorporated into the service agreement. And a big part of it is, the CPI. But what we need from you all is a true understanding of what it costs each of you to do what you do. And that is going to help us to better plan for, costs going forward, because we do know that the way it has been previously done, where you're waiting to see if the county was going to give you, a cost of living. And then there were times like, no, we can't do it this year. We need to work on standardizing this. But every operational arrangement begins with knowing how much it costs. And that's what we want to work toward with you all.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a follow-up before we close out our portion of this, I just want to remind everyone what the charge of this group was. The charge of the subgroup was to create a special focus area as a breakout from the larger solid waste work group in order to discuss hauling options in a greater detail and to bring back recommendations to the full work group regarding the hauler approach. I want to thank the subcommittee for the work that they've done. I believe we have done that. In your documents, you should have received a briefing memo that covered the slides and the updates and comments from all of the haulers. Last week, we had the all hauler meeting and allowed them to give feedback on the possible recommendations that could come out of here. So we've included that as a part of your package before this meeting. We also did the collection of recommendations that covered the strategies as well. In that packet that you'll get, the key hauler subgroup feedback for the proposed recommendations included things such as the 5-year transition period under the service agreements, which you've heard Mr. Mercer and Mr. Singleton talk about. It also included a conversation around the use of tippers. In addition, it talked about 3 different pilot projects to test some ideas that we had. We talked about yard material transfer capacity.
Mhm.
And we also talked about bulk item collection and recyclables as a separate service. And then finally, we talked about the long-term and procurement being considered after the 5-year tactical plan. So all of that information is in your documents that you received before this meeting, and it gives you the recommendations and the comments from all of the haulers up under each strategy. So Madam Chair, that is the subgroup's presentation, and we appreciate you all for allowing us an opportunity to present to you today.
Okay.
Thank you, DeAndrea. And colleagues, the items reflected on the slide are built in to the next segment of the 18 strategies, correct, Jennifer?
Yes, yes,
Those
we're gonna
people,
go.
those pieces are now merged into with the broader picture, but the sub-work group spent considerable time talking about each of these areas. And I really do appreciate that, because we needed to hear the perspective from the subject matter experts who do the job. In any other project that we work on, we bring in subject matter experts to tell us, how is this done? And from your perspective, what would make it better? And to me, that's what the sub work group was charged to do and was able to do. And I feel really good about the information that came back, which you'll be able to see it built into the 18 emerging areas that we're moving toward considering. Are these things, the briefing memos that Jennifer talked about a little earlier, the 18 subject areas will have these briefing memos with information about costs, with information about projected timelines. The pilot projects that are reflected here from the sub work group, they talked explicitly about them, and they're now rolled into the larger group of 18. Did I describe that correctly, Jennifer?
That's correct. That's correct.
All right. And this is taking all of the balls in the funnel and bringing them to.
We're getting there. Yep. Perfect. So do you want us to move into the strategies?
Yes, there's other questions.
Okay.
Hello.
Mr. Hayden is asking a question or making a comment.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment quickly. I know you're about ready to move on, but I've been working for the county now for over 40 years. And I think I have a pretty good handle on what we do. As a group, I think all of the haulers have always been a very cooperative group in trying anything that the county threw at us. And I agree with things that Rob said and Tim, but it's DeAndre may be able to tell you, it seems to be my job to throw a little bit of cold water on a few things. First, as the response of the survey was an impressive number of over 6,000 people. If you think about it, that's only like 2% of the county households. That's a pretty small sample. I'm not a pollster or anything, but that's a pretty tiny sample. In the work group we're doing now, there are 4 haulers involved, and that's about a 10% sample. I think that's also a little bit small. The recommendations that are before us, I would like to very much emphasize that those are mostly a product of GBB. They can't, it just, all this kind of came out of the blue to us haulers. We didn't know this was even underway until we got the draft proposal of GBB. It did not come from us. We did go over it. We changed a couple of minor things. The 5-year service agreement, or whatever we're calling it, that was actually a minimum amount of time. But first they talked about 3 years. That's a ridiculously short, but 5 years would be a minimum. I don't think any of the haulers are very much in favor of putting the routes out to bid. I mean, as you've seen in your own questionnaires, everybody in the county is pretty much happy with the service they're getting. If you put it out to bid, you don't know who you get. I'd like to emphasize again, this kind of all came out of the blue to us. But it was interesting, Ms. Rogers, what you said a minute ago about, asking the people that do the work. I call that the micro theory of ideas. If you want to dig a ditch, you can go talk to a bunch of engineers and all that. But if you really want to know how to dig a ditch, find the guy that's got the shovel in his hand. He'll tell you how to dig a ditch. So if you would keep that in mind as we go forward, I would appreciate it. And as I always emphasize, a lot of families are involved in this business for 40, 50, 60 years. And this is our lives. It's not just another county proposal. This is our lives. And I'd like you to appreciate that going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. And I want to acknowledge, I received your letter, and we are taking your letter, your communication under consideration. Let me share a couple things with you from a statistical perspective. In terms of surveying, there is a number that you need to reach where you can generalize comments, and that number was 3,000. We didn't arbitrarily pick that number out of the sky, but for our population here in the county, in order for us to have statistically reliable sampling, we needed a minimum of 3,000 responses for our population. Now, these are statistical numbers. These are numbers that come from the experts, the sub contractor who works, or the person that GBB had work on the survey. That's what they do for a living. So back to your analogy about digging a ditch, you have somebody who understands statistically what we needed. They gave us the guidance. We targeted 3,000. 6,700 is beyond the statistically significant population that we can generalize to our county population. That is from a statistician perspective of this in polling. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we too wanted to ensure the feedback that we got was feedback that was reliable and verifiable from a statistical significance standpoint. That's the first one. And the second one, we agree with you. We absolutely understand the concerns that you all present. And that, I'm going to reiterate it again. This is not about getting to the end of 5 years and say, thank you very much for your 40 plus years or whatever. It's about how we figure out, like Councilman Toka indicated, where do we go next? Because as I said to all of you all on the briefing for the all haulers, we've got to look at things in terms of long-term sustainability of our solid waste program. And that's why we wanted you all at the table with us. We want to continue to have you at the table with us. And that's for the long term. It is not a short-term fix. And the pieces that are in what was presented, the feedback, we brought that from this larger group to the smaller group for you to feedback on, because those are the things that we were talking about. And we couldn't get into the level of detail on those things. So I spoke with the county executive and told him that we needed to have a smaller group go into finer details. So it's not just that GBB came up with something and then came to you all. We had been discussing those things in this larger group. But just wanted to make those few points of clarification for you in terms of the process, how things came to you all and where we're going.
Well, I appreciate that, and very much, because I know you don't have to include us in the group. You know, you could just go and do what you do and then tell us. But you're not about that, so I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Okay, so thank you. So Jennifer, we really do need to
Yeah, we'll
move
hit
through
the
the 18. We
yeah.
may move to segment 3.
Yep, we're going to hit the gas pedal here and move into our first group. And I just want to say the first group is collection, and Sam's going to present. We have 4 items in the collection section for the proposed strategies that do all which were discussed in the hauler subgroup. Sam?
Good evening, everybody. As has been mentioned a couple times already, one of the recommendations is to establish a 5-year service agreement, provide some stability to the system for Baltimore County and some level of security for the haulers that are performing the collection services. Study the current yard waste material collection routes, see what makes sense there, whether they should stay weekly or go to stay every other week or go to weekly. Still maintain a seasonal schedule, however, and then eliminate the use of plastic bags for the collection of yard waste. This will reduce some of the contamination and the processing problems for processing the material into a suitable product. Provide some support to the haulers of Baltimore County concerning emerging technologies in the waste industry on an as-needed basis, things like GPS tracking, service verification, telematics, and also routing software to try to identify potential opportunities for more efficient routing of the collection routes, and help them with understanding, if they need it, with the use of fully automated trucks, which can reduce labor cost and provide a much safer work environment for their employees. Also, one of the considerations is purchasing the county purchasing recycling carts with a partner such as Recycling Partnership, who provides the county with a grant to offset some of the costs of the carts. Generally, this helps improve the quality of the recyclables that are collected, encourages increased participation and increased diversion of waste materials from the Eastern Sanitary Landfill or other disposal sites. And it just improves the quality of the program. Okay.
Okay, and I just would note here, we had discussed having a separate contractor for the supply and maintenance part, possible small business requirements or goals there.
I'm sorry, you're absolutely
That's
right.
okay, no problem.
And we would like to try to establish some potential pilot projects. What this allows the county to do is to understand the different types of services before committing to a full-scale implementation. Develop service models that best fit the county sites. Pilot number 1, you try to have it serve 5,000 to 10,000 dwellings. Same-day collection, new recycling carts, and assist the haulers with putting tippers on the back of their trucks to reduce some of the service issues. Once again, pilot 2, same-day collection, 5,000 to 10,000 dwellings. The cart for each material, that would be yard trash, single stream recycling, and yard waste. Food scrap with the yard waste in an organics cart, and establish a fully automated service. And then pilot number 3, food scraps outside the yard where no yard waste collection occurs, just to determine if this is a viable option. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay.
This new service would be for collecting bulky materials, including mattresses, in a manner that would allow them to be reused, repaired, recycled as much as possible, and not just wasted. It's nice to see the survey results reinforce that residents would like this service. Collection services would be curbside from residences and at county residential convenience centers. The collected materials would need to be triaged and sorted at a facility. Involvement of nonprofit NGOs, private repair cafes, etc., would be involved in the effort. Implementing these changes should be considered in order to obtain data on quantities and appropriate fees.
Okay, thank you. That is our first, we moved from collection to new services and programs. Harvey just covered bulk items. The next one is,
Jennifer, can we pause there for a second?
yeah,
On the new services and programs, this is the point that I do feel we need to link back to discussions that tied into the hauler discussions. We can't, the thought was maybe building that into the current operation, but at their recommendation, we are willing to consider looking at this as a separate service. So I just want to tie back why it was so important, to the larger work group, to tie back why it was so important for the sub-work group to have detailed conversations on things. So that is something that we're accepting from the hauler sub-work group, to consider that as a separate bulk items, as a separate effort.
Okay. Okay, and then the next item, which is strategy number 6, second one under new services and programs, is a zero waste education and outreach program, which would be both enhancement to current programs and advancement of new zero waste outreach, including some of the items noted here, the backyard composting and grass cycling, which we've already covered. We have noted the expansion of household hazardous waste hours and consistency among the sites. The exploration of product stewardship, not only for extended producer responsibility, but also to, management of materials, but to try to increase recycling with this, tying that in. Looking at decentralized food scrap processing, possibly at schools, food capture for donation, and added on here, refillable packaging and materials. And I just wanted to thank Seth for your inclusion of some additional comments on the zero waste item, which we received, and we'll process that into the thinking here. But again, on this item, and what you'll see on all of these strategies, is a 2-pager with additional info before our next meeting. And we are incorporating the good thinking and structure from the North Carolina state presentation on this and other sources. So this is exciting. And of course, this one is marked as zero waste, as it is part of it. Okay. Next, Steve.
Yes, good evening. Hi. So today, the county's primary asset for managing non-recyclable waste is the Eastern Sanitary Landfill. It's been a great asset of the county, and allowed you tremendous flexibility and resiliency over the past couple of decades. The landfill, though, does have a limited life. It's not immediate, and so there's no need to panic, but somewhere out 10, 12 years or so, at the current rates, the landfill will fill. And it's not too early to start planning for what about life after that. One of the options that could add resiliency to your system is to begin to transfer some of the county's waste to other waste disposal facilities now and extend the life of the landfill, pushing out that date at which it closes. So we will look at a model of transferring up to 215,000 tons a year to other facilities. The implementation would likely be a procurement open to all licensed permitted facilities at which the county would run. It could be a procurement for a term of 4 to 5 years, depending upon what was selected. But this is a method for extending the life and adding resiliency. Later, we're going to speak to some options for having something other than a landfill for your non-recycled waste.
Thank you, Steve. And again, now that's our first strategy under infrastructure disposal. The next one I'm going to speak to about regional collaboration. There are a number of existing regional entities that can support a regional project that Baltimore County could be involved with. The Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority, who's assisting on this project, it's a government body that works on behalf of its members. MES, the Maryland Environmental Service, statewide agency that works on a fee basis for projects, and the Maryland Clean Energy Center has financing available. So these items we are pulling into this strategy two-pager, which you will see, covering statewide legislation in this, including current Senate Bill 650 and House Bill 1094, among others. We're also covering in this the general obligation debt, bond considerations, and the use of referenda. So a number of items in this strategy around regional collaboration.
Okay, again, as a strategy for the non-recycled waste is mixed waste processing. So we had a couple of presentations in the work group from two styles of mixed waste processing and diversion. One was, one session was focused on just the organics fraction and how that could be diverted away from the landfill. The other one was more mixed waste stream and processing and options that are out there today. So I want to emphasize that these facilities are meant to complement the recycling programs that the county has and would continue to have and expanded to have into the future. But this is a way of having a disposal option that's not a landfill. You will still need some landfill capacity because even out of mixed waste processing facilities, there will still be some residual waste that needs to be disposed of, but you're trying to get that waste down to 10 to 20% of the waste stream rather than what's going in today. So what we'll come forward with are really, in the interim period, feasibility studies on what fits Baltimore and what fits in the timeline that you will be looking for.
Okay, next item under infrastructure disposal is strategy 10, the yard materials site. Based on what we just presented for the proposed pilot projects 2 and 3, which involve food waste, we have an item, a strategy related to planning for that combined flow, either through a permit modification on the current site and changing practice, or outsourcing that to a different processor, which we know there are a number of interested parties operating or about to be operating in the region that this could be interest to. So on this, again, tying changes to the current site, which is now processing compost and mulch, right, at the near Eastern Sanitary Landfill there, to be changing to a combined flow of yard waste and food. And we have this also marked zero waste strategy.
So another option on the disposal side could be a vertical expansion of the Eastern Sanitary Landfill. There's no room or space available to grow larger from a footprint point of view, but there is, and there's technology and there's capability of going higher. It involves engineered earthen beam berm walls that can take the landfill up to greater heights. This could provide the county with substantial additional disposal capacity, and depending upon the success of the recycling programs and what's chosen for diversion, it could solve the county's disposal needs for a couple of decades or more.
Okay.
Oh, and account. So this is mine too. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Bureau accounting. So one of the things, and this is going to lead to when we talk about also funding mechanisms, is looking at the Bureau more as a business unit and to improve the accounting systems and to move towards what is called in the industry full cost accounting, and getting all of the costs under one budget area. Today, there are certainly a lot of funds in the Bureau of Solid Waste, but there's other functions that are related to and support solid waste that are over in other budget centers. So a best practice in the industry, it can be full cost accounting.
Okay.
Moving forward, the county will do some planning for the future site of the Western Acceptance Facility. One of the issues with the Western Acceptance Facility is it's located directly in a floodplain, subject to flooding on a periodic basis. This complicates its operation, certainly, and provides some risk for the county. As you do planning for a new location for the Western Acceptance Facility, you may have other options for disposal options, such as rail, waste by rail, transportation, disposal options, possibly coordinated with the siting of a mixed waste processing facility also. And then another recommendation is to establish a yard waste transfer capability at the Central Acceptance Facility. This would provide more efficient routing options for the Baltimore haulers, result less traffic time for their trucks to travel to the Eastern Sanitary Landfill. Also provide a couple of flexibility, increased flexibility for the county for how they wish to manage yard waste in the future. And consider the possible use of general obligation bonds to fund this project, part of the project.
On MRF upgrades in future planning, today your recyclables are taken to this Central Acceptance Facility. This is a facility that has served the county well, but it's starting to show its age, and it does not have the latest in technology and the latest that's available to both increase recovery, but important in today's market, decrease the amount of contamination and to produce clean products. So there are some upgrades in future planning that could be implemented at the Central Acceptance Facility. We're going to come forward with budgets and estimates and specific ideas and opportunities for upgrading the Central Acceptance Facility MRF. And then the pathway to an enterprise fund. So our last meeting, we had presentations about best practices for funding solid waste departments. And one that is used extensively in the US and by several large counties in the state of Maryland is what's called an enterprise fund. And this is where a system set upon and user fees and the concept of those who use the system pay for the system, rather than the system funded as it is today out of general tax funds. So a recommendation will be to look at setting up the Bureau as an enterprise fund. There are additional costs incurred with just operating the fund, but it can provide a very powerful way to raise the monies to pay the haulers a fair share for their services are providing, to raise capital, to build the new infrastructure, to have the system that Baltimore County wants for the future. We'll come forward with a plan and ideas on what has to be done. You'll probably have to go to the state legislature and get special purpose authority to be able to implement this. But other counties have already done this in Maryland, and so there is a pathway, somewhat known pathway towards achieving this.
This is for the long-term residential collection services period after the 5-year service agreement transition period. In years 3 and 4 of the transition period, the long-term residential collection system would need to be planned, procured competitively if that's the decision, and contracted for. The future system would be determined with input from the pilots. The procurement would be designed to provide preference for the current haulers in the county by limiting the number of areas that could be awarded to each, setting aside specific areas for county-based haulers, and requiring subcontracting with minority and/or woman-owned county businesses. The term of the initial contracts would likely include a 10-year term to support financing new requirements. And all these services would be targeted to start in fiscal year 27.
This is our
The Bureau, the Bureau of Solid Waste Management needs to have an organizational review. Some of the factors that we've been told about include that the current organization has over 50% of its workforce older than 50 years and a quarter older than 60 years. There's about 20% of the workforce today that could retire today. Additionally, there are 23 of the Bureau's 149 employee positions vacant. This review and adjustment will help the Bureau effectively and efficiently manage and administer both what it does now and the many changes that are likely to result from this tactical plan. The review and organizational adjustment is proposed to start next fiscal year and continue for several years as the tactical plan is implemented.
I'd like to comment on this piece. For those of you who have followed our strategic plan, you will see in our strategic plan, there is a section of our plan about our workforce. And so across the enterprise, we are working on knowledge transfer and succession planning with each of our agencies. So I think this is something that comports with that strategy, because we recognize that we have to plan for succession and knowledge transfer, particularly in technical areas and areas like solid waste management, water and sewer. I mean, there's just a lot of technical areas that we're working on. But what I would ask under this area, recommendation area 18, in the one pager on this one, can you give us some best practice examples in terms of jurisdictions who have implemented in this area knowledge transfer and succession planning strategies effectively? That would be helpful to us, but it does comport with is the strategy priority area 6, Savitra, in the plan, or 5? Well, it's in our plan. It's on our workforce. This our strategy in our strategic plan. I just got my numbers mixed up tonight, but this comports with that, aligns with the work that we're doing enterprise-wide. But if we could have that kind of information, that'd be helpful.
We can add that, Stacy.
Okay. So that is the end of the strategy presentation. I know we're at the very end of the meeting. We've covered everything that is the next slide. So I think we're at the end. If anybody wants to make comments as I address the poll process, which will happen next. Anything else that folks want to ask?
I do want to address Chaz's point of what are the priorities among these recommendations and are they equally important? Chaz, that's one of the things we will do in the review process and your feedback and ranking and voting. A part of it is about prioritization from your perspective, what you feel, what we individually feel in terms of prioritization. So you will have the opportunity, Chaz, to respond to that.
Can I ask you a real quick question about that? Jennifer gave the some of the process at the beginning of the meeting. And will we be, how much data information will we be getting before the meeting in 2 weeks? You know, more than a day ahead of that meeting, so we can really properly assess priorities. I think we need a little more time, and then just 4 days right after the meeting, including the weekend. It's a pretty tight schedule.
It's very tight schedule. I acknowledge that, Stacey. We are aiming, we are delivering interim recommendations mid-March. So it's a very tight turnaround.
Jennifer, getting to Chaz's point about the summary documents, I think we talked about that in the planning meeting. How soon before the meeting could they be given? Because then you have a chance to look at them in advance of the meeting. Because we got one more input piece coming, and that's comment from the that public comment period from the community, because we felt that was important to add to the survey.
So we are planning as a group to issue the 2-page per strategy summaries and schedule to the work group on March 2nd. Before the meeting on the 4th, where we go through in detail each strategy with the, we have an hour, that first hour, to essentially go through that before we open the meeting for public comment. What we're proposing is that the poll be done by the work group by the following Monday, March 8th, because we want to be able to include your input as we deliver the interim recommendations mid-March, and then the tactical plan mid-April. It's a very tight timeline.
But let me ask you something about, because Chaz, I see your point about getting the 2-pagers with the additional data and the benchmarking information and cost projections just 2 days before the meeting. You'd have them 2 days before the meeting. We're going to go over them in that first hour of the meeting, and then you have we have the public give their comments, and then we would have the until that Monday. Yeah, I mean, it is over the weekend, but I don't know on GBB's side if we could push it a little further, say to Wednesday, to give work group members just a little bit more time to get back. Those of us who can do it, you know, we're committed to doing it, but can we think about that?
The Wednesday, we are, you know, March 15th is that following Monday, so I was trying to be.
Well, if we need to push 2 days on the
couple
days,
the 10th, I mean, we could do the 10th if that would help have a full week.
And then just push 2 days on the other side for our side, because the biggest piece is that the interim ones on things that we need to get started this year. That's where the first group is. And then, you know, the feedback, everybody's feedback going to be sent back to the group to review as the whole document, you know, the full document is prepared for, because everybody will get to see the document before it's given to the CE. But on the ones that we need to try to place some funding requests in the budget, we need to have that, you know, by mid-March. We have a couple wiggle room. There's a little wiggle room there, Jennifer, in terms of the 15th versus the 18th. You know what I mean? We have a little bit on that end.
Okay.
We just have to figure out placeholders. You know, that's something that we'll have to work on with you, Matt, and, you know, we could, because Matt is going to take the areas and try to map it to general funds versus capital. We still have to do that part. But I think we could give the work group members a couple more days, Chaz and colleagues, if from Thursday to.
I put Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Okay. I just was updating that here.
I mean, because this is the time frame. We knew the time frame was tight from the beginning because we're putting that pressure because we want to get things into FY22 budget. Some of these things, if not, we have to wait, and that's my concern.
I totally understand the budget issue, and I understand the emphasis on that, which obviously makes the interim priorities the most important.
Yeah.
I think immediate deliverable, but yes, totally understand that.
So we're looking at then Wednesday the 10th for responses back. Those who could get them in advance, because get them before then, fine. Because I'm going to try to get mine back, and those of us who can. But Jennifer, you could begin tabulating at least to see where things are coming out. Like some of them, let's look at some of them we know already. We know that as far as removing the plastic bags, because that was something that the county was working on anyway. The CE just requested that we just build it into this work. We know that the solid bulk trash piece was something that the CE asked us to look at, and we said, well, let's talk about this process. And what it came out is that we feel that the haulers through the hauler discussion process feel that should be a separate service versus trying to add it into what they do. So that's one, developing an RFP and identifying what that would look like, countywide. Some of the things that are deeper in these recommendations in the document that was sent about, feasibility studies, even about the landfill, going up and things like that. Those are some of the to me, the immediate ones that come to mind that we know we need to move forward or want to move forward, because those were things that were already on the drawing board. And then some of the other pieces, from a policy standpoint, things that would take money that we would need to do. Deandra, you still on? Because I know we got the town.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Right. The other part of it is the implication with the legislation, even, the legislation about the study of the doing a regional disposal piece. We got to factor things in like that.
Mm-hmm.
State, Ms. Rogers, I'm sorry, I had to step away for just a moment. Did you need my attention on something?
We were just talking about the time frames in terms of the review, given more time, because what we need to do is we're going to get the packets, the one pagers on all of the 18 recommendations that have fiscal implications and time projections. Then we're going to talk about them in the meeting for the first hour. And then we're going to hear from the community, however long that part takes. Then instead of giving our response back on each of the 18, because there's a polling process that we're using, each of them with the sub recommendations we'll be able to comment on. And we'll go over that in the meeting in that first hour, so everybody sees what the homework is, if you will. But we're proposing to move that. We would have from Friday, because the meeting is the evening meeting, from Friday to Wednesday to go through each of those and give that feedback. Take the poll on each of the, send it back. And then we can look at what is going to come out as the interim. And what we said is we definitely know that we need to deal address some of the hauler compensation pieces. We need to deal with the removal of the plastic bags. Because like I said, those were things that we were working on already. So there's like 4 things that we know are interim. There may be others. I think we need to look at feasibility, the whole feasibility study pieces for some of these pieces. We've got the pieces in terms of how do we do that upfront diversion, the mattress piece. I mean, there are pieces as we go through. We've got to call out what we clearly feel that we need to fund in FY22. That's what March is about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
I think if we've come this far, taking it all in and our brains haven't exploded, especially for those that this is not our area of expertise, we now have to just basically go with our positions from our lenses.
mm-hmm. Okay, so I updated. I will send out an updated version of this slideshow because things shifted and also some items were updated. So I can send out an updated PDF to the group.
And don't forget, you all, we have the full survey. We have in doing your homework, if you will, you have the survey data available as well. The survey data, to me, we have to take that into consideration, what their position was. Then we'll have to look at the cost. Because I know we all need to see, okay, well, what does it cost? For example, I think the number was thrown out, it was like $13 million if we went toward carts. If that's an estimated cost for doing it countywide. Well, if we can't afford to do all of it, why don't we think about a phased approach in doing it? Look at the data. We have the data where people responded and who were interested, and we had that data by zip codes. That could help us look at a phased-in approach, see where we got feedback, where there's an interest. I think those are the kind of decisions that in our thinking we need to make.
Could I?
Hey, Kara.
Yep. Hi. Hey, yeah, no, thanks for the evening one. I really wish that I hadn't had a standing commitment on Thursday mornings, but I did want to. I love your point about focusing on the survey and just some of like almost what's not reflected in the survey. I know, Jennifer, you mentioned early on that the vast majority of everybody is a homeowner and that's got a high satisfaction. And I kind of have 2 takeaways from that I don't want to lose sight of all the multifamily situations. I always thought since the beginning that the multifamily and the commercial, like there's such a opportunity for high efficient processing and collection out of those areas. And so I'm just not crystal clear on with these 18 options, like what level of nuance, to your point, is like what level of nuance can be reflected in these 18 things? Are we just taking these 18 things and like ranking them, or like when we look at collection, are we going to have some avenues to recommend or vote on? Like, we should focus on the commercial, because there was a high level of satisfaction with the homeowners, but on the commercial side, where I think there is room for improvement anyways, there was low satisfaction on the recycling on the commercial recipients. So I thought that was interesting, and I think that that's something that we should look into, is how are those little balls getting juggled in each of the little buckets that we're talking about.
the survey, in your options, or in your feedback, Kara, there's a portion in there for free text that you can write. And then you can also write it. But I'll tell you, on the multifamily, one of the things that we as the county have to take into consideration, and I have asked GBB to write about it, is our position with respect to calling on this multifamily piece, because we are a monopoly right now in how that's done. Compared to other jurisdictions, we have in terms of that is privately done in other places. So that we got to jump that hurdle first. And the CE does want that information back as a part. He and I have discussed that. So before we can get to that part of it and recycling, if you will, we have to look at how we do that in general. Because right now we're literally in a room by ourselves in terms of how we do multifamily and the expense associated with multifamily. So there's some other pieces we have to deal with, but I know that we're out of time, and I know that the time frame in which we had to do this was indeed aggressive, but I feel like we've come a long way, learned a lot, and the manner in which we're now trying to cull out of this interim recommendations that are associated with really what we need to put in the FY22 budget, then we'll have a longer time. We'll have a longer time to discuss as the documents go back and forth, because we don't really have another meeting scheduled, but then GBB in our planning meeting, we'll talk about how we process from here. But there is room, Kara, for you to put your comments, but I just wanted to fill you in on some of the discussions that have been presented, or data has been presented to us. It was eye-awakening on how we do things here in the county. And we're the only jurisdiction definitely in Maryland that manages multifamily that way. But we were under, in the document itself, there's recommendations, if you will, but there's an area that we're doing about other considerations. Plus, all of these are recommendations to the CE. What we invariably adopt will be based on discussions and deliberations with him, and from the standpoint of funding, how we have to parse this out over multiple years, because it all can't be, like the pilots, can be done all at one time simultaneously, not only because of money, because of manpower, the capacity of the department. But I'm glad we have that. I'm glad that we have that part about the succession planning for the department and the structure of the department. I think that's very important and so well aligns with our strategic plan.
As much as the succession planning, if there's any commentary on that in the other options, because I know like with the recycling facility and like going vertical, like some of those have big impacts on the manpower conversation.
Yeah, that will be part of what you see in terms of estimated FTE impacts, which factors into the budget impacts of the strategies, so that we're trying to be as comprehensive as we can on each one with what you see in terms of schedule impacts and including staffing.
Thanks.
Okay.
Well, I know there was a lot tonight, but I'm just really proud of how we're at least trying to process through, and GBB team and the authority have put a lot of work in these one pagers. I've seen the template of the one pagers and what's going to be in there for us to read, especially around projected costs. And now I've just added one little more wrinkle was about best practices, you know, in areas where we don't. We already know about the whole piece on, because I already asked that on multifamily. I've already asked, give us the data, tell us where, and we'll call folks up and say, okay, well, how did you transition or what did you do? But it's a pretty penny too. But I do believe that recycling in general, you know, what other things can we do? Because remember, the county isn't just looking at 5 years. The county has to continue to look at this 4 years, because guess one thing is real clear: trash is not gonna go away. We're gonna have to deal with it into perpetuity, because as long as there's people, there's what? Trash. That's the bold reality I've come to with all of this.
Okay.
Death, taxes, and trash.
Inevitable. And the need, and Harvey, as we've talked about before, and the need for water. And guess what? I have both those things in my portfolio. No wonder I don't sleep at night. I just cannot go to sleep at night. It's just crazy. But anyway, thank you all so much. We're over time, and the project planning team, if we do have a few minutes to recap, we can do that. But thank you all very much. It's just an incredible amount of work we've done. And I know we still have a lot to do to get to the interim recommendations, but I think we'll get there.
Okay. Over and out.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
night.
Night.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.